middle of 6 lanes of traffic with moving cars, buses, and taxis trying to enter and exit the Holland Tunnel. Tribeca was no longer the triangle below Canal. It was the triangle of belligerent cars, and all of its points were leading to my death. But I'm moving, I'm zigzagging through these cars as they're honking and swearing because I had a duty. I had just been to a loft on the corner of Holland and Tunnel, in the middle of a heat wave, and New York in the summer smells like spoiled clam chowder and cat pee. And what I would so much have rather been doing in that traffic is putting my thumb out and hitchhiking my way to the Jersey Shore. But no. As a Time Out magazine intern, it was my duty to fetch precious cargo that needed to be back in Soho by 4 p.m. It was an 8x10 photograph of Sean Penn. Now you would think, why didn't they just scan the photograph in high resolution and email it to Time Out magazine? Well, this was 2003 and they hadn't really figured that out yet. So I wanted to end my internship on good terms. I had 2 days left. So I figured if I get hit by a Big Apple tour bus and there I am lying in the ambulance on a stretcher, I'm going to tell that EMT, bring Sean Penn to Bleecker and Broadway. It is my dying wish. But that did not happen. I was able to get back to the office and I turned in the photograph to a grumble of a thank you. And as I'm heading back to the intern cubicles, where Creepy Eric is sitting, who's also the intern there on Tuesdays and Thursdays, who's in business school and loves ultimate frisbee, I'm heading over there to sit next to him, and it goes dark. All of the lights go out, and the computers make that zap to a blank, dead screen, and I hear the groans of editors who are all on deadlines. Now, you would think that if I had a smartphone, I could Google, what's going on in New York City? But they hadn't quite figured that yet out either in 2003. So I look out the windows and there's no traffic lights. It doesn't seem like there's lights in any of the office buildings in the area. And so I'm looking at Creepy Eric and I'm looking out the window and the intern supervisor comes over and says, there's a blackout, you guys can go home. So we're heading down 10 flights of stairs and Creepy Eric's like, oh, if you don't want to go back to Brooklyn, I live on Avenue D. And as much as I didn't want to walk over a bridge in a heat wave, the idea of hanging out with Creepy Eric and his shirtless roommate who always played acoustic guitar during a blackout when the sun went down, he was bound to play the entire discography of Dave Matthews Band in chronological order. I would much rather walk over the Williamsburg Bridge. And so I did, with hundreds of unplugged warriors trying to make it home safely without any sort of sun poisoning. And I'm thinking, and I'm walking, and I'm like, wow, I'm kind of at peace with what's happening. I'm not really freaked out by the blackout, and you know, for the first time in my adult life, I don't feel like I need to be in control of this situation. I'm just gonna go with the flow. And so I went with the flow straight to my freezer and I grabbed all of the popsicles and the ice cream that was in there, and then I went with the flow across the street to my neighbor's house who were already having a party on the roof deck. And when the sun went down, New York was black. And then the fireworks went off on my street, and when you looked out into the darkness, there were little bursts of light in the distance going throughout the whole city, and I was like, wow, this is the perfect summer night. And I did not allow myself to have these perfect summer nights at all yet. This summer, I kind of didn't want the power to ever come back on. So the next morning I got my wish. The power was still not back on. But it became much less of a whimsical notion and much more of a nightmare because I looked at my cell phone and it had 10% battery, and I realized that the tiny bit of food that I had in the fridge was going to be spoiled. And the most panic-inducing thing was that I didn't have an agenda. I didn't have a schedule or to-do list. I didn't know what was going to go on. And now I know why they call a bug-out bag a bug-out bag, because I was bugging out. I was throwing a flashlight and ramen and my piggy bank and an Us Weekly and a phone charger, and I tried to put my cat in there, but she didn't want to go. But I went, and I ended up in the McDonald's in Times Square. There was air conditioning, there was a charger to plug my phone in, and there were chicken McNuggets. And as I'm sitting there eating the chicken McNuggets while my phone is juicing, I'm thinking, I just took a bus from Brooklyn into Manhattan and then jumped in a cab with strangers because they were going uptown to get to a place that not only had electricity, it had more electricity than any place in the world. And then I started to feel sick, and yeah, it was probably the chicken McNuggets, but I didn't like capitalism, and I was pretty sure that I was going to be a vegetarian and a socialist by the time I left this McDonald's. And so I left the McDonald's, I unplugged, and I headed towards Central Park. Because you know what? I just wanted to go with the flow. After a summer of having 2 jobs and the most disappointing internship, I was ready for this unexpected adventure. Thanks.